In a world of deceit, telling the truth is a revolutionary act. It's the David Knight Show.
As the clock strikes 13, it's Thursday, the 16th of July, year of our Lord 2026. Well, yesterday we had a vote in the Senate, and of course there's already been a vote in the House. Every single Republican in the Senate and every Republican in the House, except for Thomas Massey, voted to sell us out to a foreign government. It is a competition between the Zionists and the technocrats as they both pick the dead carcass of this republic. Who is going to control us? How will they control us? We'll take a look at that. We'll be right back. Yes, it was a sad sight to see. I put together this clip. Call your senator. It doesn't do any good. They've already gotten the call. They've already gotten the cash. They've already cashed in. Every single one of them. I mean, we're not talking about just Ted Cruz. We're talking about Rand Paul, who, as many people reminded everyone on social media yesterday, Rand Paul is no Ron Paul. Absolutely is not. You can see the pictures of him kissing the wall and all the rest of this stuff while they fill his pockets with filthy lucre to trade the sovereignty of this country away and to rob the taxpayers of America for the benefit of a foreign murderous government. As a matter of fact, it just keeps coming from people who are aid workers, French aid workers. You have American Jewish doctors who talk about the cynical murder of children, using them for target practice. He said, in a given day, they would all come in, shot on one particular body part. So there's obviously some kind of a competition going on with the snipers, he said. And then they would shoot the kids twice just to make sure they were dead. And this is a French aid worker, said, we found a mass grave in Gaza containing 300 bodies, small children killed with their hands tied behind their backs. Had an American Jewish worker who came back from Israel, and he said, he witnessed this stuff where they put them in a ditch and they're crying and they just cover them with dirt. So the dirt just smothered their cries. These are the people who seek to control our military and our government. And by the way, folks, they already do. This is a legal cover. This is a way for them to get the funding secretly rather than doing it in the open because the American public is getting so fed up with this. And here's another example of this. Look at this. This is settlers. And we see these atrocities over and over again. What's being drugged behind that Jeep? That's the dead body of a child. Dragging it around for a long period of time, then finally getting out and doing something with the body. These people aren't just murderers. They are vicious murderers, hateful murderers. It's just unbelievable what these settlers are doing, so-called settlers. The way they're destroying people's farms, as I pointed out the other day, they go in and they're uprooting these olive trees that have been there, many of them for a century or more. And they're doing that because they want to destroy the ability of these people to make a living. And they want to destroy these areas and then take them over. It's really cynical. Oh, and by the way, one of the reasons that the Israelis did that, they're typically allergic to the pollen of the olive trees. Maybe that might be an indication that they're not from that area, that they have no ethnic connection to that area at all. Here's another example of them destroying homes.
Forcibly removing a Palestinian family from their home and are about to demolish it. The family had only 30 minutes to grab whatever they could from the house at gunpoint.
لجأنا إلى الجيش الإسرائيلي اليوم بالبواقر، دخلوا علينا هنا، هدوا الدار على كل العفش، ما سمحوا لنا نجين يعني 2% من أغراض الدار.
These are the remains of
They
the
didn't give us time to get our stuff, is basically what they're saying.
here, including 8 children, are now homeless.
وين بدهم يروحوا؟ بدهم يضلوا في البلد، وين بدهم يروحوا؟ بدهم
They'll stay here. Where else do we go? This is our land. Even in a
The house
tent.
was built in 2016, and just before the demolition, a lawyer confirmed that the house was under protection under a court order.
دفعنا مصاري للمحكمة.
They don't care about the rule of law.
ودوها قبل ما تصل المحكمة العليا. هذه الدار حوالي 700-800 ألف شيكل.
In 2026 alone, Israel has forcibly displaced over 3,000 Palestinians through home demolitions and settler attacks.
المستوطن برع زيتونك، برع يعني بدوش يخليك تاكل، لا بده يخليك تاكل ولا بده يخليك تسكن. هدفه واحد، هو تهجير الشعب الفلسطيني من هذه الأرض.
Of course, that's those Muslims, and we don't care about them, right? You know, these other people. We don't really. They would never do that to us, right? Would they? Here they are burning people out of their homes in Palestine. Well, let me tell you that the Israelis have plans for us as well.
One thing that most mainstream outlets don't talk about is that the Israelis are already in the United States training local police departments. We know, for example, that the Israelis are training the Atlanta police, that this area now called Cop City is the site of Israeli police and Israeli IDF training our own police. I don't want the Israelis training American police departments. The Israelis have no respect for human rights or civil rights or civil liberties.
Or the rule of law. And he knows. He's John Kiriakou, the whistleblower, about the lies about weapons of mass destruction that sent us into the Iraq War. Lies based upon torture. And yet, it's kind of interesting when you look at the reaction to some of the information that has come out. This is from World Magazine. It's a writer by the name of Craig Carter. He says, blaming the Jews again, and he repeats all the old tired tropes about blood libel and all that. How dare the New York Times put out a slander that would make a medieval inquisitor blush? Playing the victim card for the people who are the oppressors yet again. And so he goes through the most salacious aspects of these papers that have been released, talking about torture in prison. You don't think the Jews would torture people in prison? They brag about it. Look at what Ben Gvir says. It's like this person doesn't look at anything that is out there. Ben Gvir talking about how he wants to torture people, how he wants to murder and execute Palestinians. He doesn't even try to hide it. And yet this guy pretends, oh, that's just a slander that goes back to medieval times. It's a blood libel, right? No, it's not. It's reality. And so they'll focus on the most sensational aspects of it, talking about how they sexually tortured prisoners, how they raped women with dogs and stuff. And they say, well, somebody said you can't train a dog to rape a woman. I don't know. Probably you could train any animal to do anything. That's what... was it the guy who did Beyond Freedom and Dignity? B.F. Skinner. B.F. Skinner could. He could train an animal to do anything. But that's not the issue. The issue is, what do you see out front? What do you see happening for the last 2 years? Don't you want to listen to any of the legion of people, all the journalists that were murdered deliberately? Very well marked. All the children deliberately targeted? A doctor who stayed behind to help children in the hospital? So what did he get for that? He got sent to prison for over 500 days now that he's been in prison. It's just unbelievable. And it's so obvious and in your face. You've really got to look hard to try to look away. You really do. There's absolutely nothing in this about Gallant, nothing about destroying homes there by the IDF, nothing about the mass graves, many of them found with children with their hands tied behind their back. None of that kind of stuff. And nothing about the report that I had from Ben Swan the other day. He showed the highway of melted cars. He goes, now the people who came over from Hamas, whatever they had, they didn't have weapons that could melt cars. He said, you know who had the weapons that could melt cars? The Israelis with their Apache helicopters and so forth. So what's going on with this? Even the extent that we had Gallant say, yeah, that this house here, there were 18, 19, something like that, Jews that were here. Yeah, we killed them so that we could try to hit the Hamas people. That's their ethics, if you could call it ethics. And that's what John Kiriakou has said. He said they'll wipe out an entire apartment complex if they think there's one guy in there that they want to get. They have absolutely no concern about what the Pentagon cynically calls collateral damage. They have no concern about attacking civilians. And folks, we have merged our values with them a long time ago. Whether you talk about the financial merger or you're talking about the technological merger of weapons design, ethically, we are already merged with that morally bankrupt, horrific, if you could call it even a system of ethics. There are no ethics. They do whatever they want. And both Trump and Netanyahu boast about how much they like Genghis Khan, how he is greater than Christ. Well, to the Jews, everyone is greater than Christ. They hate him more than anything. Why do Christians want to tie themselves to these people? You ever hear anything about being unequally yoked? Boy, this is really unequally yoked, isn't it? The night before the Civil Commission released its report, the one in Israel that was whitewashing this, the New York Times published its front page, an outrageous accusation against the state of Israel and its prisoners in particular. It accused Israeli prisons of sexually torturing Arab Palestinian prisoners, even of using dogs trained to rape the prisoners. So this guy is outraged on World Magazine. And when you use that phrase, blood libel, that is really telling. It says that you are appealing to your sense of being a victim rather than a rebuttal to the facts. When your response is, and I've seen this over and over again from the left, where did the left get that, by the way? They got it from liberal Jews. They're the ones who created the critical race theory, the LGBT nonsense and everything else. And now the conservative ones, the radical Zionists, they are the, actually the term is revisionist Zionists. They're the ones who are really radical. They're like the radical Islamic terrorists of Islam. It's a telling phrase when you use this kind of stuff. You're just out there saying, shut up. I'm not going to listen to you. You have no right to speak because you're racist, racist, racist. We've heard that from the left for the longest time. Now you hear it from the right-wing Israelis. You hear it, they accuse people of anti-Semitism, which is the same thing. You're racist. I'm not going to listen to anything you have to say. Everything that you say is discredited because you're racist. Not going to debate the facts with you. Just going to fly into a fit of rage. This is the game that is played by Zionists, even the Zionists at World, who say they're Christians. They want to focus on the most sensational aspects and try to debunk those. But it's also interesting how they do ad hominem attacks. In this article, he goes after the author. He said the guy who wrote this piece for the New York Times, his name is Nicholas Kristof. He claims to be a progressive Christian. In an interview with Jim Wallace, however, he said, I consider myself a Christian, for I admire Jesus' teachings, but I doubt the virgin birth, the resurrection, and other miracles. So he's not a believer. He's not a Christian.
He just thinks Jesus was kind of a nice guy, you know? He was a cool guy. He said some nice things, right? And that's what really matters.
Well, and that's really kind of the position of most atheists and Hindus and Muslims and so forth. They doubt all of those things that he doubts, but they look at Christ as a great philosopher, something like that. But the reality is that the Jews that this guy Craig is so upset about, they go beyond that. They don't even say, well, I admire him. No, they despise him. They curse him. The Hollywood Jews have done their best to turn the term Jesus Christ, which is a term, it's not a name. His last name was not Christ. That is his title, as Messiah. They do their best to make that into a curse word, and they have been pretty effective at doing that, using it over and over again in their movies. So does this writer at World, does he worship a political state? Does he worship Israel, or does he worship Christ? And why don't you question the statements made by the Israelis, who absolutely despise and curse Christ? Yet he plays this game. He says, well, that guy who wrote this, he calls himself Christian. I don't know if he's a genuine Christian. There's not anybody in Israel that is writing the opposite side of this. They wrote this report criticizing the behavior of Hamas. And that's probably right as well. They played this whataboutism, right? Well, what about this? They killed some people, so we killed more, and we killed our own people, and we continued to kill civilians for 2.5 years. That's the game that they play, and it is simply a game. So this guy says, well, woke journalists today see themselves as activists for social justice rather than neutral reporters. I would say this guy, like so many Christian, so-called Christian Zionists, he is these world journalists that you see here, see themselves as activists not for social justice, but as activists for the state of Israel, rather than neutral reporters. There is no neutrality in here. How dare him come after the neutrality of somebody else? Everybody's got an opinion. Look, I've said this for the longest time. I said, let's get over this idea of neutrality and objectivism. No such thing exists in the writing of anyone. Everyone has their own belief system. Everyone has their own worldview. At the very least, that shows in what you choose to report and what you say about it. And so let's not pretend that somebody is objective. I've said this for the longest time, that if somebody tells you, well, we're objective, we're CBS News, or we're Walter Cronkite, that's the way it is, right? No, it's not the way it is. That's the way Walter Cronkite is telling you the way it is. Maybe it's Operation Mockingbird or whatever else. Now they've got a different operation. Now this is Operation One World Press. So you can just monopolize everything instead of mocking what the CIA wants you to do. You just monopolize everything. It's Operation Monopoly now is a game that they're playing with the press. And of course, the Trump administration is heavily involved in that in terms of green lighting all of these mergers. And now at the same time, you have them moving to remove the restriction on the number of local news stations. That was a restriction that was put there by the FCC. Now, again, the FCC is not a constitutional entity. There's no reason for them to exist. However, when you look at the practical effects of this, they had a rule saying we don't want more than 39% of the stations being owned by one entity. Now they're saying we don't care about that anymore. They want to have a monolithic, monopolistic media. No more Mockingbird, right? They're doing the same thing that they do with that as they do with social media. They want to get everybody into these walled gardens, shut the walls, and then tell everybody, now you can't say this or that. If you do, you're going to be shadow banned or kicked out altogether. And so when you look at the importance of these local stations, they're one of the last possible, certainly when you look at Sinclair, right? Everybody has seen that video clip. I've played it many times myself, where they've got all the local anchors just reading off of a script, a Mockingbird script. But they want to have a monolithic approach to information from everybody. They don't want different opinions, and they don't want news organizations that are going to be telling you what is happening in your local community. They want to control all of that, and the FCC is basically removing that. Now, that is, and as I said before, I don't agree that there should be an FCC. I think it's unconstitutional. But when you look at the way that they're moving to take this out, it is actually a law from Congress. This is not a regulatory thing that the FCC created. So the FCC really doesn't have the power to waive that. That is something that would have to be changed by Congress as a law, since they've decided they're going to ignore the Constitution. We are so far beyond the rule of law, it's ridiculous. So he finishes up by saying, many people want to believe that Jews are evil. Well, I don't know. Jesus said that. I want to believe what Jesus said. Jesus said, your father is the devil. It's not Abraham. They said, no, our father is Abraham. He said, no, Abraham saw my day and rejoiced in it. Your father is the devil. And he called the rabbinical Jews of his day, he called them the synagogue of Satan. Why would I say otherwise? I'm not going to contradict the Lord Jesus Christ. Are you? Have you been that controlled by the Judaizers like Huckabee and this writer at World Magazine that you would do that? Jesus said, he said to the Jews, he said, you search the scriptures because in them you think you have eternal life, but they testify of me. All of these Christian Zionists say, oh no, the Old Testament is simply about the nation of Israel and what God's going to do with this ethnic people. Wrong. That's absolutely wrong. From the beginning to the end, the Bible is about the Lord Jesus Christ. If you don't have that perspective, that hermeneutic, you're going to get the wrong answer. Well, let's take a look at another thing that is here locally as we're talking about merging our government with the Israeli government. What is this going to look like? Well, this is another article that was from World Magazine. An appeals court judges and weighs nuts, bolts, and religion. Oh, that sounds kind of neutral, doesn't it? No, the reality is that this is a guy, he's a practicing Jew, and he wanted to buy into a Christian auto shop franchise. It was called Christian Brothers. And he thought that was just their last name. No, it's their value. It's their culture. It's their religion. And they said, sorry, you're not compatible with this. And so to show that they were right, he turned around and sued them because he's going to have his own way. He liked this auto shop. And part of that is because they wanted to make sure they had practicing, believing Christians who are not always going to seek their own way, exclusive of what is good for everybody else. You know, Christ said,
this guy saw a business. That's all he saw. He's like, he's buying credibility. He's buying his way into a market.
That's right. And so now he sues them on some novel interpretation of a law saying you can't exclude me. So what he's actually doing, we have seen the Trump administration at the behest of Israel destroy the First Amendment, seek their best to destroy it. Sorry, you can't protest Israel. You can't boycott Israel. If you protest, we're going to kick you out of the university and we're going to make sure that you never get a job anywhere. You're not going to work in this country again. You criticize us, we're going to get you fired. We're going to ban you from traveling in the country. We're going to ban you out of our banking system. They do this over and over again. But as much as they hate free speech, and this is the way they want to change our culture and our country and our laws, they also hate the free exercise of religion. You know, my entire life, I've watched the leftist Jews who have attacked the free exercise of religion through the Supreme Court and other lawsuits, try to gag people, say that you can't mention the name of Christ. Why would they do that? Well, that's where they're coming from. They don't mention it except in a curse. I'll tell you a story here. We had a guy when we had 6 video stores, and so we did several build-outs of these video stores. Some of them we expanded, some of them we moved, so we did a lot more than 6 store fit-ups. One of the guys that we did business with, and he did an excellent job, and Brad would always answer his phone and say something about, may the Lord Jesus Christ richly bless you. That was on his answering machine or something like that. And we wound up going to a church where he was an elder. And pastor. Sorry, go ahead.
No, he was just a really nice guy. If he's the one I'm remembering. I was very young at this time, but
yeah. Brad Rupp.
Yeah, tall. He had white hair No, I'm thinking of a different guy.
No, that was him.
Yeah, he was tall. He had white hair at a very young age.
Yeah,
but he was like this big, strapping guy. But he was just very soft spoken and very kind at all times.
Yeah, ex-Marine. Yeah, the pastor there actually told Brad, he said, he said, if you're going to put that on your answering machine, you're going to have a lot to live up to.
And I just want to say, since I remember him as that, I think he really did.
He did.
I can remember him always just, very kind, very, like I said, soft-spoken, always willing to,
as well. Yeah. Died young.
Always willing to, even with kids, had time for them, had time to, interact in a very kind way. And I can, I just remember him at the church, one of the few people that I do remember distinctly just because of that.
Yep. So when you look at this, you look at Christian Brothers, that's what they're trying to do with their business. This guy comes in, he doesn't value those values whatsoever. And he shows it immediately by, well, I'll get my way from you. And if I don't get my way, I'm going to take you to court. That's why they didn't want him there. And so they said, we want to ensure that we have individuals who have the same religious beliefs that operate our franchises. So he said, no, you can't do that. He said, I am the perfect candidate on paper. And you kicked me out simply because you don't like Jews. And
Even if they didn't before, you're giving them a pretty good reason not to. You come in, you try to use the legal system to bully and abuse these people.
And again, it's exactly the way he would treat his customers. He's not going to try to work things out with them. He's just going to bully them and take his own way. And so when that doesn't work, then he plays the race card. And he says, well, you people are white and I'm not white. They're white when they want to be, and they're not white when they want to be. This is the game that they play all the time. So then he plays the race card. I need to have the same rights that you white people do, he said, employed by white citizens. So the denial from the auto chain involved not just his religion, but also his Jewish ethnicity, he said. And so that's, are they a race? Are they white? Are they a culture? Are they a religion? What is it? Well, it depends on what they want from you, right? They're chameleons. They'll come up with any justification with this stuff. Christian Brothers said in its own Fifth Circuit Court filing that each of its locations has a mission to spread the message of Christianity to its guests and to others through its auto repair work. Because of that, the corporation has the right to choose franchisees who are professing Christians. So Christian Brothers has never granted a franchise to a non-Christian. He's not being discriminated against. These are people who see their work. And why don't we all see our work as a mission field? Why don't we all see our work and how we conduct ourselves?
And we also want to point out that this isn't about, hating Jews as a people. It is pointing out that they engage in these tactics over and over again. Well, it's a part of their culture and baked into them at a young age. But we still want to spread the gospel to them. This isn't we've got Jesus and you don't, and we don't want you to have him because you're bad.
That's right. He wasn't treated poorly, or he wouldn't have wanted to buy the franchise. He was treated very nicely. So he wanted to buy into the franchise. The problem is that if you're going to seek your own way, and if you're going to try to screw the other person every way that you can, that's not a Christian value. That's the value of your culture. That's the value of your group, and we don't want that culture in our culture. And that goes beyond the auto repair business as well. Said, ensuring that the franchisees espouse a Christ-following faith is, in short, essential. Having fellow Christian believers in that role is imperative to preserving Christian Brothers' identity and their distinctive brand, and to maintaining its unique, loyalty-engendering culture. Dominic's claim that religious-based decisions now count as race discrimination, perhaps only for Jewish people, is contrary to the law, said their lawyer. It would transform the stated law that he referenced into a de facto ban on religious exercise. How long have we seen this coming from the leftist Jews, from the other individuals who are out there who seek to oppress the free exercise of religion, whether it's about prayer in school or whether it's about the LGBT? They have always used this as a cudgel against Christianity. He said it would transform it into a de facto ban on religious exercise, which would entirely undermine the ability for companies like Christian Brothers and other companies like it to maintain a distinct faith-based culture, identity, brand, and mission. And that it goes for the individual we were talking about as well, who completely shut that down. Well, we had a lot of slander that was coming out yesterday about J.D. Vance, and I think the two things, this thing is connected to it. He's trying to distance himself from Mossad and from the Epstein stuff at the same time. So he goes on with Joe Rogan, and he talks about how Israel had a secret plot against him. He drops a Mossad-Epstein bombshell, an explosive Joe Rogan interview, and yet at the same time, what they do is they come out and accuse him. Well, he's using the helicopter to take his kid to play golf or something, right? And so they're coming up with, immediately, you start to see personal ad hominem attacks against J.D. Vance. Not to say he doesn't deserve it. It's just that whether he deserves it or not, they wait until he makes a statement against them. And so the 100 House Democrats voted to, let's take a quick break here. This is the bottom of the hour. I want to get Tony Arterburn on, and we'll continue with this, and we're going to talk about what is happening with Flock. There's some updates with Flock. There's also some updates with what is happening with CBDC. But we're going to get into what is going on with gold, because, folks, gold is not just about preserving the value of your money. It's also about preserving the value of privacy. So we're going to take a quick break, and we will be right back. Stay with us.
Using free speech to free minds. It's the David Knight Show.
Welcome back, folks. Joining us now is Tony Arterburn. Always great to have Tony on at Wise Wolf Gold. And of course, he's also set up davidknight.gold to let him know that you're coming through us. And we're going to talk about the economy. We're going to talk about gold. What is going on with gold? What's going on with Fort Knox? They keep bringing this up. And it's kind of funny, isn't it, Tony, how many times they brought up Fort Knox, but yet they never do anything about it, right? And so you got Jesse Waters interviewing Scott Bessent. And this is reported from, I see this on Twitter, some account called Wall Street Gold said, Fort Knox gold confirmed. And they got it all uppercase. They got a flashing ambulance. It's like nothing was confirmed. Do you believe a word that anybody in this regime says about anything? But of course, it's not been audited. And that's the reality. Even when they've had their show visits, nothing has been audited. Nothing has been validated. There's not been any verification of what is there, the quantity or the quality of it at all. And so they say Fort Knox gold is confirmed. And we have over $1 trillion in gold. Isn't that great news, Tony? We have $40 trillion worth of debt, and we got $1 trillion worth of gold. I'd say that we have bankruptcy is confirmed here, wouldn't you?
Well, that, it is interesting. They dangle this Fort Knox audit, and they have been, even in the first Trump administration, there was some word about that. They were going to look into it, and Trump mentioned it, just offhandedly. But the second Trump administration, that was something part of Doge, and we're going to get to the bottom of this. We're going to look at our assets and everything else. And it never went anywhere. It is a huge question mark. It was supposed to be, it's over 4,000 tons of gold that are in Fort Knox. It's about half of the supposed holdings of the United States. And that supposedly we're still the world's leader in gold holdings. I don't believe that. I think the Chinese have overtaken us some years back because of their secret gold buying. But it's interesting. They continue to float it. Nothing really happens. And it's, I don't know if it's to keep the world guessing or something like my friend, one of my friends sent me a meme yesterday, and it said, Gold Knox audit starter kit. And it was a can of gold spray paint and a lead brick.
Yeah, that's about right. Yeah, this tweet that was part of this article here on Zero Hedge. Yeah, Fort Knox gold confirmed, over $1 trillion in gold, the largest gold pile in the world. Isn't that great? Like I said, we got $40 trillion in debt. We got $1 trillion in gold. We got probably $160 trillion in unfunded mandates and obligations when you look at Social Security and other things like that. So yeah, the bankruptcy is writ large for anybody who wants to take a look at it. But he also made another interesting statement. Scott Bessent did when he's talking to Jesse Waters. He said, "Well, America used to be backed by gold. Used to be backed by gold and silver." He said, and the important word there is used to be, right? Yeah. Not anymore. The emperor, we have an empire that is nothing other than naked tyranny. The emperor has no clothes, and he's got no money in his purse either.
It was interesting. There was a tweet on Gold Telegraph last week. I talked about it on my show, and it said in the monetary history of the United States, the dollar used to be backed by gold, then it was backed by oil, and now it's backed by psychology. It's just backed by belief. It's kind of like Tinkerbell. If you don't clap, Tinkerbell dies. And that is the point of history in which we are right now. And it's funny because I was looking at the headlines on Kitco, and the markets are not rational, as you can see. Oh yeah. If you look at where the world is headed, and we talk about this every week, but it's more and more evidence just stacking up. The world's not creating a different reserve currency to compete with the dollar. Is going to be regional currencies, cross-border payment system, blockchain, all the rest of that. But what they are building, and the central banks continue to be very bullish on and buying at a record pace, is gold. Mm-hmm. They're buying gold. Gold will be the new medium of exchange, even in the face of everything that's happening right now, David. As you know, you look back at the beginning of the year, what fundamentals have changed? Have things gotten better with geopolitical uncertainty? Have things gotten better with the national debt and fiscal responsibility? Absolutely not. All the things that drove gold to $5,600 an ounce back in January and February are still there, but we pulled back below 4,000 today, and there's a lot of reasons why. Not real valid reasons, but they are reasons. I mean, you look at the price of crude oil hitting $80, the uncertainty around the Strait of Hormuz. You have the nomination of Warsh, and Warsh was supposed to come in and lower rates and be this very dovish extension of what Trump policy has always claimed they wanted, which was a weaker dollar. I think this is a huge head fake. He's not going to raise rates. I don't believe that they will, even in the face of inflation, because it would damage the economy. You and I both know that.
Well, they can't even service a debt if he were to raise it up like Paul Volcker did. Not even make an interest rate payment. So, yeah,
no, not even close. So you've got this weird point of history that we're in, and the market's using old metrics, a previous system and a previous reality to judge the current prices of things, which is lucky for all of us. I mean, the first thing I did this morning, I saw gold below 4,000. Well, I'm buying some inventory.
Yeah.
I'm a buyer, when I see stuff like that, because I know that fundamentally this is all fake. And I mean, as nicely as I can put it, the market is irrational, and some of these so-called experts are not going to look really good in 2 or 3 years when this all shakes out. I mean, what is the next shoe to drop when the price of oil continues to cut into the standard of living of people all around the world, when the economy slows, supply chains are further disrupted? I mean, as fragile as everything is, and you think that it's funny because they're going to raise rates because inflation's high because the cost of oil went up. That's irrational.
It is.
Even if inflation is higher, then gold should be higher. And so to say that it should be lower, I think, is the clown world economics that we're in right now.
It is. And when you look at what Trump's policies are doing, constantly adding more burdens to us, right? Putting taxes at the border, all kinds of tariffs, making things more expensive. The oil embargo that he has created with all of this stuff. And it is, no relief in terms of regulatory stuff that's going to make anything cheaper. It's just one burden after the other. The other one being the massive electricity rates that are going to be kicking online here in terms of data centers coming online. And so that's going to make our businesses less competitive. It's going to take thousands of dollars out of our pockets. They're talking about how for millions of households, they're going to have billions of dollars, and I forget how many tens of billions of dollars increase in electrical costs that are there. Because if it was floating right now at market prices, they have some regulatory restrictions on it. And or if it was just floating at what their real costs were, it would have gone up over 70%. And so you're going to gradually see that coming into your electric bill. It's going to be yet another burden put on your back by the Trump administration with its, clear out everything for the data centers, everything for our surveillance technology, nothing for you type of aspect. So all this stuff is going to come home to roost. They're going to want to not raise interest rates in that kind of an economic environment, whether or not they could afford to do so with the interest rate payments that they would have to make to service the debt. They're not going to want to do such an obvious move that would really tank the economy that's already going down.
It's good that I didn't pay attention in school in the public school system. I did my own thing. I worried a lot of people when I was growing up. I read my own books and look at, I was interested in stuff that was outside of the curriculum. It's a good thing too, David, because I looked another headline that I saw today was that gold also fell in the face of new retail sales. Now, if you read that, you think, wow, the economy's doing better because there's higher sales. Do you know what makes sales higher? Inflation.
Mm-hmm.
So if something costs, from $1 to $1.50, and it's the same margin, and you sold the same amount of widgets, you didn't make any more money because your cost went up to sell the same product. So that's a magic trick. And if you don't understand, like if you never actually ran a business, that probably escapes you. But that's a literal headline. I mean, prove it. Prove
and
that
so what it
sales
does is it bumps you into a higher tax bracket. So
Yes.
they tax. That's the thing about inflation. They tax you on the devaluation of the currency that they create.
In a modern, any type of sound economy, if there's if things are real and there's a free market, prices go down, folks.
Yeah.
Things are deflationary. Your money actually should be just as strong or stronger 50 years on and 5 years on and whatever. Same thing we had in the 19th century. There was periods where we had slight inflation. You had, Lincoln's greenbacks. There's a couple of periods, but throughout the 19th century, on average, there's no inflation. I mean, if whatever cost, if you had bought a set of clothes to go to George Washington's inaugural, that same set of clothes cost you the same in 1902. Basically no inflation throughout the 19th century. So inflation is something that only comes through fake money and, a Marxian central bank system, which is, in the Communist Manifesto, I think it's the fifth plank is to have a central bank and it's control of the money supply outside of the free market. So prices should go down. And that's the thing about, you and I talk about gold and silver every week and what the prices of commodities are. It's all relative because we're talking about fake money against real assets. David, did you know that in the last 25 years, the world has consumed more copper than the previous set of human history beforehand?
Wow.
In the last 25 years, with all the things being built for the information age, copper, that's a precious metal, by the way. I mean, we deal a little bit in it, but copper is a glue that holds the world together, all of civilization mostly. And then the next in line of that is silver. So all these things against the dollar, to me, I'm bullish on long term because I know what the dollar is. It's built on psychology. If you don't believe in it, it goes away. And guess what? The world is stopping to believe. Like the belief, we should have a belief meter. It's not just dollar usage, but acceptability of the psychology of the rest of the world.
Well, the silver lining in all of this, except it's not silver, is that your kids are going to be millionaires. That was the headline on a puff piece cheering Trump accounts for kids, right? The Treasury will give you $1,000 for your child if they were born after Trump became president. And then, of course, you can put money into that account as well. So they said, so if you do all this stuff, your kid could be a millionaire. And I immediately looked at that and I thought back to the last time we saw massive price inflation because of a global oil disruption. And I remember the joke that people had at the time. Of course, back then you had phone booths, right? Which I guess we should put a footnote there to explain it to some people who don't remember those things. But this guy is in a state of suspended animation. He wakes up 50 years in the future, and which would be about today, and he makes a phone call to find out what's going on, and he decides to call his bank and see if they still have his bank account. Not only did they not close it out, which a bank would do, but it's now, because of compound interest, a little bit that he had there is now worth a couple $1 million. And he goes, "This is great." And then the operator comes online and says, "Please deposit $50,000 for the next minute." And that's what made me think about these Trump accounts. It's like, yeah, all of our kids are going to be millionaires. That's the good news. The bad news is it isn't going to buy anything. It's just monopoly money.
I think you've played it before on the show, but back in the late 70s, Dan Aykroyd did that skit on Saturday Night Live playing Jimmy Carter.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, "We're going to make everybody a millionaire," like because of inflation. Through inflation, we'll all become millionaires.
That's right.
That's so true. That is really the issue is when you have an economy built on liquidity injections and printing more, which we do now, like beyond any scope we've ever done before. And there really wasn't any real quantitative easing, I believe, until the 1990s. I think that started under Greenspan.
Yeah. He laid the foundation for that.
Laid the foundations for it. But before that, there really wasn't any. I mean, there was tricks that were made, and the borrowing from the Fed and the rest, and T-bills and stuff, but it wasn't like true central bank intervention out in the open until like the last 30 years. So you can see.
By the way, Tony, we've mentioned this several times. That quantitative easing is back. They're just not talking about it. Everybody talks about the interest rates. This is the part of the iceberg that's above the surface. The massive part of the iceberg that's below the surface that you don't see is the quantitative easing, and the Federal Reserve is growing that rapidly.
Yep. It's got its tentacles in everything, and controlling the financial reality in a way that skews it like a funhouse mirror. And it creates like this upside down understanding of economics. It's like what I'm seeing right now. I mean, the fundamentals of what drove gold to record prices, and silver, I mean, at $120 an ounce, all that stuff's still there, and worse, by the way. It's worse.
Yeah,
and
that's right.
Even if you look at the demand for things, especially silver and some of these industrial metals, is off the charts. And even the deficits every year. But so much of it's papered over, so much of it's controlled. And it's funny, you may disagree of this, but I've been looking at this like the closure of the Strait of Hormuz, the spike in the price of oil, it has given the dollar, or those who control the dollar, some breathing room, because it strengthens the dollar in the sense that it creates this false impression that its main competitor is not a safe haven asset.
Yeah,
and that's
right.
One of the things they've been doing to gold since the 70s, since Volcker, and especially since the Hunt family, and driving silver to $52 an ounce in 1980. And I say they were deep stated. I mean, I think they were taken on by the deep state. I think it was exposing the true lie of fiat currency. But if you look at what's happening now, this is a perfect scenario if you wanted to buy some time to keep the dollar so-called stronger, without really raising interest rates or doing anything. You can use misdirection and say, well, this is caused by Iran and the oil supply shock.
And we don't know who caused Iran, do we? It just happened like the pandemic thing happened, right? Who knows that these things just happened? The pandemic did it to us. Iran did it to us. Iran war. We don't know how that got caused.
Yeah, it's the invisible enemy, like the 9/11 hijackers and the COVID 1984. You can't see it. Same thing. You can't see what Iran's actually doing, but they're definitely closing the Strait of Hormuz through these actions, and it's really landing right. I think it's an opportunity to those who control the dollar.
I agree. Yeah. Here's an article from Sovereign.com. On July 7th, Bloomberg published an article with the headline, "Gold's bull market has ended, and now all eyes are on the bears," saying that retail investors have headed for the exits. But they point out the same day The Chinese central bank reported its largest monthly gold purchases since 2023. They are buying the dip. And as they point out, and it's accurate because it's what you've been saying, Tony, the price is not the story. The story is what central banks are doing, because they were the ones that were the dominant force on the run-up of gold since 2022. And the central banks have bought nearly an all-time record in 2024. Now the massive demand that ran gold up, they said the price has nearly doubled. Central banks buying slowed to 863 tons in 2025, but it's still higher than the historical averages, but it's down 21% from the year before. Nevertheless, the central banks are not trading, trying to chase momentum. And that's what the retail trade typically does. It's like, what asset is going up? Let me buy that because it's going up. No, they're looking at long-term value. They're looking at it from the perspective of savers who are accumulating a reserve asset. And like any sensible saver, they buy less when the thing that they are saving gets expensive, gets expensive. So they buy less when the price goes up. Now that it's going down, they're, as you point out, loading up the truck. They backed it up and they're loading it up. They bought only 27 tons in all of 2025, the Chinese central bank did. They bought, however, 40 tons in just the first 6 months of this year. So they're buying it at a rate that's almost 4 times what they bought in 2025.
Central banks, if you like net purchases, even with the downturn and even with the sell-offs of places like Turkey and Russia and India that were putting some on the market, it was still 17 tons net in like April. I mean, even with the sell-offs of these, large gold holdings, and that was for liquidity.
That's right.
For energy, right? If the United States into World War II, 1944, right before the end, you had Bretton Woods, and gold was set at $35 an ounce. Officially, we'd held that since 1933, and it was said this is the world's reserve currency. Now the dollar, and that's why we haven't had an audit of Fort Knox since the 50s. That was been our hand. Like we had so much tons of gold, we're the world's leader and all of that, and it never really had to be accounted for. One of the reasons that Nixon took us off the gold standard is because these other countries noticed something. In 1965, we took the silver out of our coin, started debasing our own, our coinage and our currency. I think the world took notice of how much we were spending, how much we were borrowing, the Cold War, the Great Society on the Mekong, as Lyndon Johnson called it. And so the world took notice. They tried to cash their gold or dollar holdings in for gold at the gold window. Even de Gaulle sent the president of France sent his warships over to pick up the gold. So we went off the gold standard because the gold reserves weren't there to back up, all the money supply that we had created throughout the world. And that's held, even with that psychology all through those years, is held through where we are today. But the world's not. And you talk about these central banks; these aren't retail investors looking for value, looking for the next 10% or 15% return. They're looking for the new system, and that's the rub. That's what's really. It's not just these fly by night investors and speculators, because that's what makes the volatility. That's what makes this whipsaw back and forth. Well, with the structure and the bones of the new system are going to be built on gold. And you can quote me on that. It's happening. I mean, it's so apparent to me. That's what's happening. It's not about a new currency. The currency already is gold. We're going to use technology. I mean, he had Putin last week or so telling some of the countries in the Asian sphere, let's use local currencies. Let's see to trade with each other and through the ruble. Like interlinking things with blockchain. And they're just using it for cross-border payments and abandoning the dollar. It's just part of de-dollarization.
That's right. And when you talk about, a lot of people say, well, we went off the gold standard there with Bretton Woods II, went to the petrodollar. And yet the U.S. government was really off of the gold standard before that, weren't they? Because they weren't, they were spending far more than the gold that they had, and everybody knew it, as you just pointed out. So there was a pledge, basically, that they were going to use gold to back their currency, and yet they continued to print more and more currency. So they broke that promise, and people called them out on it. So then they came up with a petrodollar, which is now dead. And so if you have a situation where the dollar is going to be the reserve currency, people are looking at this, especially the central banks, and saying, this American government is overextended. It's unpredictable. We don't want to trust that or that system. That's what you're talking about as the bricks and gold. The gold bricks, how about that? As that is being put out as a secondary alternative to it, because as you point out, gold is not a counterparty risk to anybody. And nobody wants the counterparty risk of this particular government. They go on to say, if you're a trader, if you're somebody who's out there trading and you're trying to accumulate paper dollars, then you're kind of concerned about this 28% drop in the price of gold off of its peak. But, again, this is a glass half full or half empty. Is it twice as much as it was a couple of years ago? Or is it down 28% from what it was a few months ago before this unusual war? So you can look at it from a couple of different ways, but the perspective that the central banks are taking is that one of a saver who's trying to accumulate gold, not paper fiat currency. And that really is what this article is about. They really nailed it, I think.
I think so too. I mean, the premise is if you're looking at history and you look at the 20th century, like that period after World War II, the rest of the world primarily used dollars.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the American dominated system until the end of the 20th century, going into the 21st. The issue now, if you look back at the history of central banks, David, if you go back to even 2008, before 2009, the rate of central bank gold buying was almost zero. It's almost zero. Like they just held dollars, they held treasuries, and they held the euro or whatever, and it wasn't considered that big of a deal. Like they had some of their gold left over from World War II era, the early 20th century, but that was primarily a holding of currencies.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's gone away, and further and further every day we get further and further away from that reality. I mean, we're not going back to that anytime soon, and the erosion of trust is the issue.
I agree. It's the same thing that happened when they went to the petrodollar. It's like we had an agreement. We had essentially a trust that you broke, and you're printing more paper than you got gold. And so the same type of thing has happened with the sanctions that were enacted by Biden and the actions that Trump has done in terms of sanctions and many other things. We have shown that we can't be trusted. We've broken that trust. We said, hey, we've got a system here. Trust us. Well, that's done now.
It is done, and this will be the age of precious metals. I think the rest of this century, as the world consolidates more of its currencies and holdings backed by something finite instead of infinite. And then the experiment of fiat is coming to an end. The American dominated fiat system, and history doesn't show us any examples where a fiat currency, especially a reserve currency of the entire planet, last that long. I mean, the lifespan is usually about 26 years for a fiat currency all throughout history. There is no exceptions. They burn out, and it's just mathematics. And I think dollar will be reset upon something else. And it's not, you and I spoke about it all throughout these years. With the dollar's not going to zero, it's going to digital. I think we have to be aware of that. It's going to be on the backs of some, stable coin.
And there you have a situation where it's not just about preserving the value of your money, but it's about preserving your privacy when that happens. That's the other flip side of that coin, flip side of the digital coin. They even do a fiat system, Tony, when they're talking about the gold coins that they're printing. Yeah, Jesse Waters, when he's talking to Scott Bessent, they started talking about the coins, the Trump coins that he's going to mint. And of course, they're going to do a 24-karat gold commemorative coin. They're only going to make 47 of them, and they're going to cost $90,000 a piece. And we've talked about this in the past, too, how a lot of these big gold traders out there will sell you collectible coins and really inflate the price of this stuff. It's like, I don't think this thing is going to weigh several pounds, for it to be $90,000 or whatever. What is it? What would that have to be? I guess about 20 ounces or something? I don't know.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. That's the grift on it. If you don't know what the coin value is, or blue sky or numismatic, I mean, you can get lost in that stuff. Just stick to the basics. What's the price of gold? What's the price of silver?
But he does know what they started talking about. Well, wait a minute. Is it legal to put Trump's face on a coin? And he goes, well, you got to understand there's a difference between coins and currency. When it comes to currency, no, we can't put his face on the currency. I have to put in God we trust. He goes, that's, but I can't put a face on there. Those are the two things. But he goes, when we're talking about a coin, we can put anything we want to on there. And there's the rub, isn't it? That's the constitutional difference that, what they've been doing is not constitutional money. And that is the thing that we always go back to. Why did the founders want to have gold and silver? And the government was not supposed to be creating currency. It was supposed to be minting coins. We got to take a quick break here at the top of the hour. Hang with us, Tony, for just a second. We're going to be right back. Stay with us, folks.
You're listening to The David Knight Show.
All right, welcome back. And we're talking to Tony Artaban at Wise Wolf Gold. And again, you can get there through davidknight.gold and let them know that you're coming through us. We were just talking about the coins, and isn't it fitting that Trump got rid of the penny, and now he's coming out with a $1 coin with his face on it as the king of inflation? Because if you go back and you look at it before the creation of the Federal Reserve in 1913, probably that penny that they had back then in 1912 had purchasing power that was greater than the $1 coin that Trump's going to put his face on.
That's true. And you got to factor in too, I think up until 1982, the pennies were made with real copper.
Yeah.
And like I said, the price of copper. I mean, we got rid of the penny, but we weren't even using real copper since 1982.
Yeah.
So yeah, it is fitting that, you get a president who's done so much damage to the dollar and fiscal responsibility and purchasing power of the dollar, through things like the liquidity injections during COVID.
And
I'm looking at the print and the debt.
Yeah.
Yes, and the debt, the unnecessary wars, and the shock to the dollar and the monetary system with the Iran war, the unnecessary war. It is interesting. I'm looking at the image right now on Kickstarter of the actual $1 coin. We're in Saddam Hussein territory, I guess, where we're gonna, and then the Brits do that. They put them, the king or the queen on their currency. And how'd that end up for them? I mean, it hasn't gone for the pound sterling either.
It's very telling, isn't it? Tell us what's going on at Wise Wolf. Anything different that's happening there?
Well, next week I should have, we've got a promotion coming up. I don't have the details yet, but we're going to have a promotion for Wolfpack. So hold off, till next week. If you're thinking about joining, there's a new promo code we're going to do. It's going to have a giveaway of a $20 gold piece. I've got a graded one. It's from pre-1933 gold that I've got. And so a few other things we're going to be giving a big July through August, maybe to September, doing a big giveaway of stuff for new signups and
just to remind people, one of the things that you do that is very, very different is Wolfpack itself. And what Wolfpack is a way for people to set up a savings program. We were just talking about, do you want to save in paper currency that's constantly losing its value, or do you want to save in gold and silver? Well, if you want to save in gold and silver, you can determine how much you want to set aside each month. And of course, people can cancel it anytime they want, but you can set different tiers. And what you do is you do group buys, and it gets a good price on these smaller denominations of stuff, I guess we could call it. When you really make small amounts of gold or silver at the lower levels, you can go down as low as $50 a month and on up. And so that is a great thing that Tony does at Wise Wealth that I don't know anybody else does.
Nobody else does it exactly like we do it. There are some subscription services, nothing close. We really reverse engineered the system for people to buy precious metals. And, the larger companies, they don't really care if you got $50 or $500. They just don't. It's not their business model, but it's mine. And I think if you're a regular everyday person and you want to set aside some fiat currency every month and put it on automatic, you let us buy your metals for you. And that's really what it is. And we've been doing this for over 4 years now. And Wise Wolf, by the way, Wise Wolf Gold, Silver, Bitcoin, we just got our trademark. It took me 8 years. It took me 8 years. I tried so many different ways, and finally I just said, okay, we're going to try it. We're going to try it this way when I finally got it. So
Wow.
that was miles. We did the same thing for Wolfpack. So I think it's a little bit of a, an achievement for the team here. We've been working just, to carve out our niche, but we're very proud to sponsor shows like yours and have been since the beginning. And even,
That's right.
a long time now, we've been sponsoring your show. And you can go to davidknight.gold. Yeah, thanks for doing that, David. You always plug for me. I always forget. Davidknight.gold. And then there's a link on there if you want to check out Wolfpack. Just hit the link that says join Wolfpack, and it'll show you like wolfpack.gold, which is our subscription service, and as low as 50 a month.
Well, it's a great service. And again, if you really want to save on something that is worth saving, as opposed to something that is going to become essentially toilet paper, you can fill your wheelbarrow up with it and go buy a loaf of bread in the not too distant future, I'm afraid. Or even worse, they turn it into something digital where they take away your wheelbarrow altogether. You won't be able to go anywhere because they're going to debank you and control you because they don't like what you're doing or whatever. That's the important thing, that kind of independence that it gives us. And so I really like the idea of physical gold and silver. I really like what you're doing, Tony. Really do appreciate your support. Thank you so much. And we're going to take a quick break, folks.
Real quickly before that,
Yeah.
we do have a question for Tony from
I didn't see that.
Hatchcar61. It says a new futures exchange opened in Hong Kong in which all contracts are settled in PM. Will this up to start price discovery in PM? A little bit of a mess at the end, but how's that going to affect things, basically?
Well, that's a great question because this is something I've been covering, if you've been listening to me, for the last couple of years. I'm like, hey, this is one of the biggest stories. It's not
Hong
only
Kong.
Shanghai, it's Hong Kong, and it's physical gold storage. And they're looking to do satellites, Singapore and other places, especially in the Asian sphere, where they're going to house and catalog and audit physical gold to use as a payment system. And that's part of de-dollarization. So I think price discovery is absolutely in question here. Like, what is the price of gold, especially when the dollar starts to lose hegemony and it's continuing to lose hegemony every single day? What happens when we get to a certain point, as far as dollar usage? That's an open question. So I don't know. It's funny because this goes back to something David and I were talking about. Everybody becomes a millionaire, like at some level, the dollar crashes and loses more purchasing power. It's kind of irrelevant. You just have to remember gold is stable. Even though they've increased the amount of gold that's, in the last 100 years, there's just more people on Earth. There's more entities that hold it. So inflationary wise, gold still buys the same amount of land and oil and food and clothing that it did 100 years ago per ounce. It's just everything that in the middle, all the fake stuff and all the currencies can keep you very confused. It's like, well, did it go up? Gold was $35 an ounce. Now it's $4,000 an ounce. Well, relative to what? It's because the dollar lost purchasing power and there's more, the supply of dollars increased, like some insane number, as far as the money supply is concerned. So I'm very bullish on things that are finite. And that doesn't even have to be gold or silver, but it's outside of counterparty risk. And the big entities are already doing that. So just
And I'm
watch
bullish
what
on things that are not digital. That's the key thing to me, because when you look at how they're rigging this whole thing, I don't want to have anything to do with a gold ETF. I don't want to have anything to do with a gold-backed coin, because you get a gold-backed coin, great, except they're still going to be able to track you, and they're still going to be able to prevent you from having a transaction. Even if that thing is backed by gold, they have the ability to preemptively shut down your being able to process transactions with it.
Counterparty risk. Always remember, if it's not in your possession, then you've got counterparty. Hey, at the end of the day, you've got counterparty, and sometimes that's okay. Like the super wealthy, they don't keep all their gold in their house. They can't. You would be crazy to do that because you would put yourself at risk. But at a certain level, just the more levels you have, especially if you're in the paper, that's not good.
That's right.
A counterpart in this world, in this realm of where we are, and I don't think we've even begun to see the craziness, the fallout from this system. I mean, we're not even close to that. So I'm bullish, and even if I'm bullish even outside the price, David. You know, I like to me, and if I've got cash, I'm turning it into metals.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. Well, congratulations on navigating the regulatory hurdles there and getting your trademarks there for Wise Wolf and Wolfpack and so forth. And people can get to Tony through davidknight.gold. Thank you so much, Tony. Thank you for joining us. Folks, we'll be right back. Stay with us.
You're listening to The David Knight Show.
Well, another day, another scandal. I guess this is really, in a sense, it's one way that Donald Trump defends himself. Before you can ingest the one scandal, they drop another one on you. And so it's like an attention span thing. The media frenzy turns on this one. Now there's a new one over here. And they don't really pay any attention to that first one or investigate it. Here's another one. A South Korean company paid a Trump company $2 million in the midst of being investigated by the Commerce Department over selling aluminum to the U.S. So you put these tariffs in there, and it's not really about economics. It's about egonomics. And more than being about egonomics, is about self-dealing and corruption. Here's another example. Jared Kushner gets caught in a massive scandal, abusing his negotiating role to line his and his cronies' pockets with $9 billion. This is an investigation that was put out by Jeremy Scahill and Ryan Grimm of DropSite. They said Iranian officials sent a private message to J.D. Vance in late June, warning him that Trump's special envoy, Steve Witkoff, and his corrupt son-in-law, Jared Kushner, were endangering the viability of negotiations to end the war. And so what the Iranians said, they said that Witkoff and Kushner were not really interested in ending the war. They were looking for insider knowledge, things that they could use to profit in financial markets. What a surprise. These two guys who never went through any confirmation hearings, these two guys who are the beard for Trump to claim that he is not self-dealing in corruption. No, it's not me. It's my family. It's my son-in-law, that type of thing. And same thing with the Witkoffs. They're both doing this type of thing. They said neither of them have displayed any genuine interest in obtaining peace in the region. Instead, what they're looking for is some inside information they can trade on. Iran calculated profits from such alleged manipulations. They said it had reached $9 billion, and they formally requested in writing to J.D. Vance that Iran get a share in the proceeds. They said we should get $4.5 billion from the insider trading that you guys have done. That's not going to happen, is it? This sum should also be allocated to the Iranian side. The exchange texts ultimately became part of the historical record, they said. It will be. They're going to release it. The Iranians were concerned about repeated leaks from Kushner to Netanyahu, an unsurprising trend given the nature of both the Trump administration and the Netanyahu administration. Netanyahu is accused of insider trading and corruption just like Trump. They are two birds of a feather. No doubt about it. Even before the Islamabad talks kicked off in April, we had already sent multiple messages to Trump through Pakistanis warning them about Witkoff's overall destructive role in the previous negotiation round. When efforts to arouse the White House's concerns about Witkoff and Kushner's machinations failed, the Iranians reached out to Vance through intermediaries. Vance's team insists that the message never reached J.D. Vance. But as they point out here, what difference do you think it would have made? Is he going to go against Trump? Is he going to go after Trump's son-in-law? Of course he's not. Makes you kind of wonder what kind of judgment these people would have to think that that's going to actually make a difference. So this kind of scandal would bring down an entire presidency and lead to massive investigations and prosecutions under normal circumstances, but not under Trump. It's just accepted as par for the course. And it's just a footnote as today's scandal. Today I learned about yet another Trump scandal, but nothing is ever done about it. It's never any investigation. They just move on. That's the way this goes every single time. The FCC, by the way, as I mentioned earlier, they want to end the cap on national broadcast ownership, and we know what this is about. We know that this is more self-dealing. Trump greasing the skids for the Zionist billionaires like Ellison who want to control all media, and they want to control all social media. They want to control Hollywood and the movies, all information. And so a key part of that, of course, is going to be owning local TV stations and making sure they're all reading from the same script. You don't want to have local independent news. That's got to be stopped before they're going to have full control. Just like they don't even want to have individuals commenting on social media. They certainly don't want to have an independent TV station anywhere. So one person who is on the FCC, who is a Democrat member, says this is an unlawful effort to hand control the public airwaves to billionaire buddies of this administration. It will destroy local newsrooms, silence community reporting, and drive up costs for American families who depend on local stations for news and emergency alerts. Well, yeah, that's true. But, of course, the same type of thing was being done with the FCC under color of law. And I say under color of law because there is no authority in the Constitution for there even to be an FCC. But under the Obama administration, they were going around asking newsrooms, how do you put the news together? Tell us how you decide what to report and so forth. They bring this in under the presumption, we're just going to regulate the airwaves so that we don't have a conflict between different, we don't have somebody running over someone else's frequencies that are on there. But before you know it, they're actually looking at content. That's the reality. They continue to single out local broadcasters based on a competitive landscape that disappeared with the VCR, says the FCC. So their case is that, well, look, now we have media that's online. We have YouTube. We have all these other places that are out there. By the way, the BBC is now demanding that YouTube give them free equal time because they're looking at this in the sense of like a broadcast type of system. But the reality is that it's all about control. YouTube is really about control. And so the question is, if these local stations at the same time the FCC says, well, this really isn't important because we now have these national, if not global, ways that people can get information and news on YouTube and elsewhere. So it's not really important. Well, if it was obsolete, so then why are they fighting for it? Why do they want to buy all these stations? Well, you know the answer for that, and your spidey sense should be going off right now. So the decades-old ownership restrictions that apply only to broadcasters, they say none of our competitors, that's out of step with today's media. Technology's changed. And so let's just monopolize the flow of information with this new technology. As I said before, they're going from Operation Mockingbird to Operation Monolith and Monopoly. They want a monolithic source of information that is out there, that is all provided by the central authorities. The move, they said, will empower local stations with the most trusted and freely available news and information. But we've also seen in this FCC under Brendan Carr how they have moved against ABC because they don't like the things that Jimmy Kimmel is saying, threatened to shut them down over jokes and commentary because the political commentators have now become comedians. They are now the court jesters of the Democrat Party. And although I don't agree with what Jimmy Kimmel had to say, I'll defend to the death his right to say it. And if you're going to have a situation where the central government, if they don't like what is being said about them, if you've got a thin-skinned dictator who wants to punish anybody who criticizes him, and that's exactly what we've got, that is a very dangerous precedent. But precedents are what this presidency has always been about. It's one precedent after the other. The FCC, meanwhile, is working on something else as well. You know, we've had a lot of press coverage over the last few days about daylight savings time. Is Washington going to graciously consent to let us control our clocks? Are they going to allow us to have one standard? Personally, I don't care whether it's standard time or daylight savings time. I just don't want to change the time twice a year. That is a horrible situation. Nobody likes that. And yet, as everybody's talking about what is the time standard going to be, nobody talks about where in the Constitution does the federal government have the authority to change time? Do they make anybody a time lord in the Constitution? I can't find a Doctor Who anywhere in the Constitution. But the FCC is now experimenting with satellites to actually change daylight. Yeah, they want to be able to illuminate different areas on Earth using satellites that would reflect sunlight back to a particular spot. And so if you go to their website, you can see how this all works. You can go in and you can move it around. You can select coordinates of where you want sunlight, and bingo, you'll have the sunlight there. And it's not just the kind of light that we get on a normal day. No, this is more akin, as they're describing it, to what you see in these troubled, crime-ridden cities where you've got a helicopter flying around with a spotlight. So they're saying it's going to be very intense. It's going to be like a spotlight shining down on the coordinates that you thought you want to light up. Now, who would want to do that? Is that something you and I want to do? He's trying to sell this as, well, this is the way we're going to get rid of fossil fuels because we can shine daylight on the solar panels 24/7. Really? Is that what this is truly about? And of course, the autonomous killer robots are about helping little old ladies get across the street. I got a bridge I can sell you in Brooklyn that is a lot cheaper right now because it caught fire on the 4th of July, but that's not what this is about at all. This is about something that's going to be very dystopian, very Orwellian, and it's being greenlit by the Trump FCC. It is a scheme. And by the way, the people who are running this thing, a couple of things I thought were interesting about it. The name that they gave it was Arendelle. I always now am concerned after Palantir and Anduril, these Palantir about surveillance and doing it for the military and the CIA, and then Anduril is Palmer Luckey's company about next generation weapons and things like that.
Not to be a total nerd and pull a well, actually, but it's Anduril.
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 Okay. Anduril. Okay. All right. I got the emphasis on the wrong syllable. Is that what you're telling me?
Exactly.
Well, I don't know. How do you pronounce the A with the umlaut over it? The Arendelle. Is that correct? Is that the correct pronunciation?
I think it's Arendelle.
Oh, okay. Well, there we go. I don't think anybody's going to be calling it that. When Americans see umlauts over something, the two little dots over a vowel, our brains just lock up and our tongues won't move. So that's...
I got all the letters I need. I don't need you modifying the letters that are in the word.
That's right.
Just add some extra ones in there if you need to change how it sounds.
I mentioned those connections simply because it seems to be a trend that when you've got these Silicon Valley billionaires out there starting to name their companies after something in the Lord of the Rings, it's because they're Sauron wannabes. And so that is taken from Tolkien's idea of a half-elven mariner who sails the heavens carrying a radiant jewel that appears as both the morning and the evening star. I don't remember that from Lord of the Rings. Maybe that's from the Silmarillion. Yeah, I never read that. But anyway, this thing is basically going to do that. They call it the future of sunlight. So yeah, it's not just geoengineering, but now they're going to engineer the sunlight as well. And of course, they'll charge you for it as well. They can put it to any precise location on Earth. You can turn the beams on or off, adjust its brightness. You can adjust its precision without installing any infrastructure on the ground, without having a helicopter. Isn't that great?
I can't wait for them to use this to torment their political enemies. You know, you just keep it constantly daylight around some South American dictator's house.
You mean instead of circling like they did the guy down in Panama and playing
Strong
on the
man Noriega.
That's right. They started playing on the loudspeakers the sound of rabbits being slaughtered or something like that. It was pretty horrific. Anyway, disaster response, military operations, law enforcement operations, surveillance, intimidating communities, or supporting unlawful police and military activity. These are some of the uses that you could put this thing to, right? And of course, they point out in this New American article that in the recent past, you had Bill Gates talking about how he wanted to divert sunlight away from the earth. So these are people who, in their arrogance, they have decided that they're going to control the amount of sun that reaches the earth. Either they're going to concentrate it in one spot or they're going to block it all together and to supposedly cool the planet off. But it's always about this, there's always a beard there about the climate MacGuffin, always trying to motivate people to control the climate. And when you understand what this is truly about, it's always about population control. Whether it's about killing people or decreasing the population or just controlling the people who are already here. It's always about population control, one aspect or the other. And they really want this thing to ramp up. They've got big plans for this. They want to have 2 up in 2026. They want to have 36 by 2027. By 2028, it jumps from 36 to 1,000. And by 2030, more than 5,000. And by 2035, more than 50,000. 50,000 of these things. It might be that maybe that'd be the only way that you can get sunlight up there, right? They get enough of these things up there. Of course, Elon Musk wants to put up 20,000 of these satellites. You're going to look up in the sky and all you're going to see is the things that belong to these billionaires.
I just did a quick Google search. And right now, accounting for all of the defunct satellites, all the debris, all the trash, there's about 45,000 that they're keeping track of in the sky. So they're looking to throw up 50,000 more things.
Yeah, that's even more ambitious than what Elon Musk is talking about with his network that he wants to put up there. I think he was looking at 20 or 25,000 or something like that. There was a site that was showing all of the satellites that have been launched by everybody and then by Elon Musk as the alternative. So they had 2 different colors that were going up. And they had this graphic that was the Earth, and then they had, the orbits were represented by circular lines around the Earth. And so it's all these other countries until all of a sudden you get to one point where Elon Musk starts doing it, and then it just explodes. And now all of a sudden all the colors are his satellites. This is even more so. And so they're pointing out the fact that the right got very upset when Gates started talking about how he was going to reflect sunlight away so that he could dim the sun on Earth. But then when Elon Musk starts talking about it, well, that's cool. Elon Musk is going to do it. Elon Musk proposed a large solar-paneled AI satellite constellation to prevent global warming by making tiny adjustments in how much solar energy reached the Earth. So he really does want to block out the sun. These guys are truly amazing. And understand, how did Elon Musk get his money in the first place? He is a green grifting billionaire, putting out, even when you look at the EVs, that was where he made his money, was with the EVs. People look at him from the self-driving technology, but that was just the bell and the whistle that he attached to this wealth vehicle that was heavily subsidized by the government. So he jumped in on that. And there are people who are running this company that had big connections to SpaceX as well. And as well as connections to Donald Trump. The guy who is running this made big contributions and donations to Donald Trump, of course. That's how you are allowed to do business now. That's the way it's going to be. You want to get wealthy, you give money to Donald Trump. If you get really wealthy really quickly and they put you in prison because you defrauded people, well, then you give more money to Trump and he gets you out. That's the way this whole thing works. As a matter of fact, this guy, whose name is McGuire, was appointed by Hegseth to the Pentagon's Science, Technology, and Innovation Board. The company has received $1.25 million from the Air Force as a research contract. So this is something that's being driven not just by their ambition, but it's also something that's being driven by the government and the Pentagon. And when we look at how these companies succeed and how they move, when we come back, we're going to take a look at what is happening here in Tennessee. There's some very troubling things on the horizon when we look at data centers, but also it's a lesson about crony capitalism that everybody can learn something from. We have Tennessee now courting Paramount Studios as California is doing their best to drive them out of California, upset about the merger where they want to merge Paramount with Warner Brothers. There's 12 different states with California taking the lead, and they are trying to push Paramount out, and they may wind up pushing them into the arms of the people here in Tennessee. We'll be right back.
Here's a little song I wrote. You might want to hear it in your pod. You'll own nothing and be happy. Ain't got no cash, ain't got no car, but 24 booster shots in your arm. Own nothing. Be happy. You can't even buy shit in the store because of your low social credit score. Oh, nothing. Be happy. You'll own nothing and be happy. Be happy and eat the bugs.
Hello, it's me, Volodymyr Zelensky. I'm so tired of wearing these same t-shirts everywhere for years. You'd think with all the billions I've skimmed off America, I could dress better. And I could, if only David Knight would send me one of his beautiful gray MacGuffin hoodies or a new black t-shirt with the MacGuffin logo in blue. But he told me to get lost. Maybe one of you American suckers can buy me some at thedavidknightshow.com. You should be able to buy me several hundred. Those amazing sand-colored microphone hoodies are so beautiful. I'd wear something other than green military cosplay to my various galas and social events. If you want to save on shipping, just put it in the next package of bombs and missiles coming from the USA.
Yeah, welcome back. We were talking about Paramount possibly moving to Tennessee because California is coming after them for $111 billion is what they want to pay for Warner Brothers, and California is trying to stop that with a lawsuit, California and 12 other states. So you had the Tennessee deputy governor said, come here, we love that kind of stuff. We love crony capitalism. Maybe we'll throw in some money of our own to sweeten the pot, because they have been known to do that. We have Marsha Blackburn, who is running for governor here. She has been senator for a while. And, of course, the thing that made her famous was her question, what is a woman, that she asked Ketanji Brown Jackson in the confirmation hearings for the Supreme Court.
It's a sad state of affairs and commentary on Ketanji Brown Jackson that she gets clowned on by Marsha Blackburn.
Yeah, well, somebody needs to ask
They're not
Marsha,
sending their best.
Somebody needs to ask Marsha Blackburn, what is the Constitution? Is there any rule of law here, or do we just hand out money to our friends who are out there? And this is, she had an interview where she was talking about her plans as governor. Somebody asked her about a major incentive that was given to a corporation. And folks, I've always had problems with this. I hope you do too. I've talked for the longest time. One of these, the worst examples of this, of course, I think, are the stadiums that are built for the billionaires, so that they can have the millionaires play a kids sport in them. And they get billions of dollars now for these stadiums. They kept getting more and more and more expensive. I did a report back in 2013 or 14 about that. And the dollar figures have just grown exponentially. What do we always hear from that? Well, we always hear that, don't worry, it's going to really grow the economy. You know, these are, when people spend their money at a football game or something like that, at a stadium that we spent billions of dollars to create, that's going to create good economic opportunity. That same money, if they spent it at a local mom and pop store or local business, that would not generate any tax revenue, right? You understand that? It's only when it's money that's going into the pockets of the billionaires that it really counts toward the economy. That's what she wants you to understand. And she goes to the extent, one of the things that she's hung her hat on, she said, you know, as a legislator back in Tennessee, I was instrumental in stopping the income tax in Tennessee. Well, she then tells us that this company that is going to get a lot of money, don't worry, because they'll make the money back in the payroll tax. It's like, Marcia, there is no payroll tax.
The understanding is it was a $30 billion deal, and or $30 million, excuse me.
She's been in Washington too long.
That money,
everything there's in billions,
in payroll taxes in 6 months. So basically, they've got a $250 million annual payroll, 2,000 jobs, the opportunity for more growth in our state, and that within 6 months, the state will have recouped every penny. And
oh, yeah, right. And again, only the jobs that are created by the big billionaires who get the state subsidies really count. If you or I create jobs, where are most of the jobs created? Are they created by the big companies? No, they all know that the most jobs are created by the small companies. Small companies operate less efficiently than the big companies. It's the big companies that are firing everybody because they're going to replace them with AI. It's the small mom and pop companies that employ people. It's the small mom and pops that increase the payroll. But she's talking about payroll taxes for which they do not have any. You know, it's kind of interesting. There's been some nice clips of Sam Neill. He seemed like a really nice person. And one of the things he said, really, as I've looked at some of these clips people put up on social media, he had an interview last year with someone, and he was talking about his observations of America, and he had this to say.
You know, it's a very sort of, it's not a happy place, America, and I wasn't happy there. I'm interested in the condition of America now. I mean, it beggars belief what's happening there now, but you sort of understand it. I was playing, of all things, at one point, Thomas Jefferson, who believed in the Constitution. He was a good president in that sense. And I was in West Virginia, and this is 25 years ago. And the director, Charlie Hayde, he said to me, "America is finished." I said, "What do you mean by that?" He said, "Look around you. Do you see anyone that's happy here?" And I said, "Well, no, not really." He said, "Let me show you why." And we drove down the main street of this beautiful little town, beautiful, and picture postcard perfect. The main street was all boarded up. He said, "Look at that, there's nothing open here. There's no barber, there's no bar, there's nothing. That no one goes to this church, you know." And he said, this is what life's become in North America. Everyone goes to the mall. Everyone is in their pickup trucks and they buy fast food, and that's how they live, and no one talks to one another. It's miserable. So when you hear a slogan like, "Make America Great Again," it makes a sort of weird sense, because America could be great again, but at community level, not with sort of strange billionaires making weird decisions.
Like turning off the sunlight or turning it on. If you pay them, pay me to have sun or pay me not to have sun. Yeah, and really what he's talking about with the boarded up Main Street. Go back and take a look at what happened as a result of Trump's test case that he ran on us, the lockdown and the disruption to the supply chain, and how they purged mom and pops left and right. You say, "Oh, we're going to help you small businesses. We got this bailout program." Well, guess what? More than 50% of that money went to fewer than 5% of the companies. And they redefined what a small business was to include big businesses. Oh, you can't have more than 500 employees. No. We'll say not more than 500 employees at one location. The whole thing was a dodge. And now the next one that's coming along here are the data centers. They're going to add billions in power costs in 13 states. Yeah, we will own nothing. And as Sam Neill noticed, we will not be happy about it. As we lose our communities, as we lose our small businesses, as we lose the potential to better ourselves by having an entrepreneurial venture and starting a business. No. You'll go to Wall Street because those people can operate for decades without ever having to make a profit. It's the next best thing to having the Federal Reserve is to be a publicly traded company. You don't have to produce a product. You produce a happy story, and people will flock to your door. So, yeah, it is bigger than just these corporate welfare things. They say they expect $6.3 billion in additional charges to consumers and businesses because of the electricity requirements of these data centers. And what are these data centers going to be used for? They're going to be used to surveil you. They're going to be used to charge you. They're going to be used, and I'm not just meaning about the money, I'm talking about criminal charges. Yeah, your electrical charges will be taken away, and you will get bigger electric bills, but no, they will charge you with crimes. Harvey Silverglate wrote a book years ago, 3 Felonies a Day. He said the criminal code has gotten so complex, so Byzantine, that most people are committing 3 felonies a day. They don't even know it. Well, the AI will figure that out for you, and it will report you as well. So it's going to add $6.3 billion in cost bills to millions of households and businesses within the next 3 years. So think about that. Billions raised against millions of customers. So that means that the households and businesses there are going to be looking at thousands of dollars more each. Of course, you didn't need that money anyway, right? You had a lot of extra money sitting around the house. The largest U.S. power grid is now 6.8 gigawatts short. Gigawatts, Marty. Yeah, this is what Doc would say. I guess we're going to need to run some more cables up to the clock tower in no time at all, right? PJM Interconnection, the largest U.S. power grid, serves 67 million customers in 13 states. It said its auction to procure power for the year starting June 2028 fell 6.8 gigawatts, Marty, short of what it'll need to guarantee system reliability during demand spikes. So notice that they're talking about reliability. If they don't get enough power, the grid will fail based on demand, is what they're saying. It's going to be unreliable. We saw that type of thing happening in Texas with ERCOT, which, by the way, the R is about reliability, except it wasn't there. Why? Because they went to, quote-unquote, renewable green sources that froze up during the winter storm and started causing blackouts everywhere to protect the grid. And so we're going to have not only less reliability, but we're going to pay a great deal more for a less reliable system. Isn't that kind of par for the course? Are we seeing that with everything? Whether you're talking about home appliances, or whether you're talking about cars, or whether you're talking about software or computers, everything is getting worse. And it's all the wellspring of all this stuff are these billionaires out of Silicon Valley who are getting richer than anybody in history of mankind. PJM established a price cap and a floor collar. So this is the third consecutive auction with this price collar, where they have a floor and a cap. They call that a collar. They said without that collar, they would have seen prices go up 70% higher. How long are they going to be able to keep that collar in? I mean, you can do distortions for a short period of time. It's just like the tariffs, however. When Trump put the tariffs on, we said, well, companies will eat that cost for a little while, but they can't indefinitely because they will go bankrupt. So they'll either pass the prices on eventually, or they will go out of business and they will pass on. PJM power prices, however, jumped 76% during the first quarter this year due to rampant demand from data centers. So again, it's the additional load that is there, but also the price competition that you see. This is an excellent article that came from Bitcoin magazine, and this is Micah Zimmerman, and his headline is "Technocrats are closing in on the passage of the Clarity Act." So what is this? Again, we go back and look at Marsha Blackburn. Since I live in Tennessee, it concerns me how she has been the water carrier for the Trump administration's push into technocracy. She's been right there either as a supporter or a co-founder, or whatever you call the people that co-sponsor the legislation, where you're talking about the Genesis Act for artificial intelligence, the Genius Act for the cryptocurrency. Now, this Clarity Act, what is this all about? Well, this is setting up some rules for the crypto community. She's also there, of course, about digital ID, which is really perhaps the most dangerous aspect of all this stuff. But we've got to do it for the kids. We've got to keep the kids safe. Well, the Clarity Act, lawmakers now have roughly 4 weeks to schedule debate and to pass the Clarity Act before they get to the August recess. It cleared the House in July of 2025 by a partisan 294 to 134 vote. It advanced out of the Senate Banking Committee in May, and 2 Democrats joined along with Republicans. This is really a bipartisan move to put us into a technocratic dystopia. The GOP is racing to establish both technocracy and a Zionist-occupied government, as we saw with the votes to merge the military and the intelligence agencies of our country and Israel. And this is at the essence of the technocracy. Negotiators have yet to reach a Clarity Act deal with the White House on the guardrails around the conflicts of interest tied to Trump's crypto ventures. Isn't it interesting that perhaps the last obstacle to putting in this dystopian control system is Trump's corruption? They can't figure out how to contain his corruption, so they're going to delay it a little bit, but it's not going to be the end of it. And when you look at what they're trying to do with the Clarity Act, this is, again, they have a shrinking calendar. It's competing with priorities like the NDAA, where they want to merge the U.S. and the Israeli military and intelligence agencies. So the question is, will it make it through this particular system here? But it's all about surveillance. And, the CIA, in an interview, you had a guy who was with the CIA who said, yeah, Bitcoin is really about surveillance. It really is. We talk about it. They talk about cryptocurrencies. Understand there's absolutely nothing that is private about the cryptocurrencies. The blockchain is public. The crypto aspect is how they handle the calculations and the processing of it. But the blockchain itself is public, which means that they can block your transactions and they can chain you into an economic slavery to the government.
Thinking about Bitcoin. Well, just like law enforcement, I guess, we are excited as well because, as you know, people may have thought Bitcoin was anonymous, but I'd say it's pseudonymous, right? It's not truly anonymous. And, there's a lot of work that we do with law enforcement, obviously, to try to track, illicit crypto payments by bad actors. I mean, look, bad actors, whether they're drug cartels or terrorist groups or, outlaw regimes, use cryptocurrency, but they used other tools as well, right? They use dollars in cars. Yeah, right. They used
and the crypto is a lot more visible,
right? It doesn't mean we say we should ban all of those, right? No, I mean, look, Bitcoin is here to stay. Cryptocurrency is here to stay. As you know, more and more institutions are adopting it, and I think that's a great trend, and one that this administration has obviously been leaning forward into. It's another area of technological competition where we need to make sure the United States is well positioned.
We need to be able to surveil everything that everybody does, especially the American citizens. This is an article by Joshua Stillman, his Substack. Why digital ID is the hill to die on, he said. He said it's because it is the authentication layer that is there. That's how they're going to identify you for all these other aspects of control. He said a friend and I got into it recently. He's smart, he's freedom-minded, and he's totally gets the danger of central bank digital currencies, CBDC. But he said he understands that expiring money, programmable control, carbon budgets, he sees most of the expanding tyranny very clearly. Yet he dismisses digital ID as a distraction. When I try to make the case that digital ID is the gateway to the gulag of the metaverse, he demands I name one thing that digital ID gives the government that they can't already do. And he says, well, it enables CBDC. And understand that it doesn't just enable CBDC, but also enables the crony capitalist version of that. I call it CCDC, the stable coins and things like that, where it has the same functions in terms of programmable control, of expiration, of all the tyranny that is attached to the CBDC. And yet it's a vehicle that allows people like Howard Lutnick to make a lot of money, people like Donald Trump to make a lot of money. So it is the crony capitalist version of that central bank digital currency. And when you look at it, it's no surprise that all these things are converging together. And quite frankly, they're all converging together. And people like Marsha Blackburn and the Trump administration's got this agenda, and she carries that agenda for them into the Senate. And when you look at where this is going to go, the former general manager of the Bank of International Settlements, that is the central bank of central banks, couldn't have been more explicit about their goals. He said a key difference with CBDC is that central banks will have absolute control over the rules and regulations that will determine the use of that expression of central bank liability. Also, we will have the technology to enforce all of that. As this guy points out, the digital ID that they're pushing so hard in every single country is the authentication layer, while the CBDC is the currency that runs on top of that authentication layer. That's why they're working so hard to put things in like the Kids Online Safety Act that Marsha was just pushing through. That requires you to prove that you're not a kid. So it requires everybody to give them ID in order to use the internet. And the same thing is being done in the UK. And I said the other day, I said, when you've got Keir Starmer on the hard left, socialist left, right? And he's pushing through this Online Safety Act. They don't call it the Kids Online Safety Act. It's OSA. We call it KOSA because we've got to emphasize how important it is to protect the kids. But in their OSA, the very first thing they mention is protecting the kids. It's not about that. It's about creating a digital ID. And he points out that a lot of people let their guard down because we heard that the Trump administration was going to stop CBDC. Guess what? That was a lie as well. It was a head fake. They put it on pause. They put it on pause until 2030. What is 2030? Well, that's the date at which they dropped the hammer they've always looked at this. Well, our 2030 society, that's where we got everybody confined in the smart cities and all the rest of the stuff. And that's when they want to put in the CBDC, is 2030 as well. Digital ID eliminates the friction that you might have. It said, already the government can do all these things, but there's a certain amount of friction. For example, we know the government can break into our home at will, but for the most part, people don't lose sleep over that because there's a lot of friction involved in that. He said, what if instead of having to actually have people physically do that, or instead of having a cop who actually has to give you a ticket, what if you just got speed cameras that do it automatically and algorithmically? What if they break into your home virtually? What if they do audits on you virtually? All of that friction, all that overhead has been eliminated. That was the thing that I saw when you had Elon Musk doing the Doge auditing. It's like, if he can use artificial intelligence to audit these vast, complicated, Byzantine bureaucracies, what do you think he can do to your own private life? It's not nearly as complicated as these bureaucracies. For anyone thinking the government already has my social security number and my phone and they can track my GPS, you're missing the difference. Right now, those systems are siloed. In other words, they're not connected to each other. That is the key thing. That is what the Trump regime has been pushing. The fact that they're going to remove those silos. That is one of the things that Palantir, Alex Karp, has been boasting about. We're getting rid of all the siloing. We're not going to have these things self-contained. We're not going to have let's see, what is it when they call it, when they have the intelligence guys, they've got all this stuff.
Compartmentalization.
Thank you. I couldn't remember that word. But yeah, right now your information is compartmentalized. Now the CIA and all these spies do that as a matter of course, because they don't want to put everything on one spot, and that's a danger to them. It's a threat to them. It's a threat to you. If they get rid of the compartmentalization, if they get rid of these silos, that is a very dangerous thing for us. And so he said back in 2021, just getting into his own tap room required a vaccine card, and New York City had rolled out some half-baked digital pass. But for the most part, it was still paper back then. Still, it was obvious where this was headed. He said, when I started warning friends and coworkers, the guy in the coffee shop, really anyone who would listen, that this was a dry run for digital identity infrastructure, that the compliance checkpoint that they just accepted would eventually become programmable and permanent, people thought I was crazy. I was doing the same thing too. I said, look what Trump is doing. You know, he is moving the Overton window to do exactly what the World Economic Forum and all these people have talked about, having a global governance. That's exactly what they wanted. And so now Trump is their guy. You know, Trump is the guy who's been brought back to finish what he started in 2020. He did it in a psychological way. They tested the concept. They saw that people immediately complied with it. There have been no penalties for anybody who did this. They got away with it. So it's like, yeah, we're ripe for the taking right now, aren't we?
I just want to briefly point out, like you're talking about, getting rid of bureaucracy sounds like a good thing, but not with the government we have now. The lazy, spiteful, stupid DMV employee that ruins your day is still the lazy, spiteful, stupid DMV employee when they're dealing with their superiors, when they're dealing with their coworkers. They select for these type of people across bureaucracy. They are loaded up with these type of people, and they grind the gears to a halt in a lot of cases.
That's right. Yeah, that's a positive for us. We don't want a really efficient government. If the government is making the trains run on time, you got to ask, where are they transporting you, right? Is it taking you to a prison camp? Well, then, no, I don't want the trains to run on time. He said, when I hear smart people wave away digital ID because the government can already track you, he said, it's maddening. They're building something that is entirely new. And I would say that is vastly different in scope, and that scope is so vastly different that it is a qualitative, not just a qualitative, but it's a quantitative difference as well. It's like watching speed cameras being installed on every single block and saying, well, they could already give me a ticket. That's really what is happening. He says it's a profoundly different category of power entirely. We're watching our neighbors accept a digital pass as the price of participation without even blinking. We saw that in 2021, and we saw the compliance muscle was already trained. COVID was the Milgram experiment. I've talked about that. The Ash experiment and the Stanford prison experiment all rolled together in one. The only thing missing then was the infrastructure at a societal scale. And of course, Trump and Marsha Blackburn and others of their ilk are bringing in that infrastructure right now at a societal scale. I'll never forget the situation at the time. I wasn't going to wear a mask to go anywhere, and so we wanted to go out for a special occasion. It was our anniversary. And so we went, I said, let's not go to any of these chains because I know you're just going to have a manager there and he's going to enforce whatever the corporate policy is. Let's go somewhere where there's a small business that's locally owned. Because my take on it, having been a small businessman, I know that you're looking at the customers there. You're trying to satisfy those customers because you got some big bills that are coming down the pike. You got your rent, you got payroll, all the rest of these things. So you are right there. You understand the bigger picture that is happening. You don't just see a part of it. So let's go to some of the places that are owned locally. And so we went to this restaurant. And you know how the drill went. People, you have to wear the mask to get a seat. But once you sit down, you can take the mask off and everything's fine. You can even stand up and go to the restroom without your mask being on. And so the person at the front said, no, you got to wear a mask to come in. So I said, let me speak to the owner. So they brought him in, and I said, this is ridiculous. I said, look at all this, and same thing I just said to you. And he goes, yeah, but you got to do it. You got to comply. I said, really? Seriously? You're going to end my patronage on that note because you will never see me in this business again. I had that conversation more than once with people, and I kind of joked we had to leave Austin because I didn't have any place I could go eat again because I had that conversation with so many different people. So they're normalizing this infrastructure everywhere. And like I said before, when you pay attention, when you see somebody who's a leftist socialist like Keir Starmer doing exactly the same thing that Donald Trump and Marsha Blackburn are doing here in the United States. And they don't care if you're on board with it either. As I point out, when they brought the Online Safety Act in 2023 to the UK, the OSA, they said leaked cabinet office meetings revealed ministers were discussing digital ID for every baby at birth. A parliamentary petition against mandatory digital ID gathered nearly 3 million signatures. But they didn't care. They didn't care that everybody was against it. They're building it anyway.
I didn't mention this to you before just because it kind of slipped my mind. And I know you don't want to deal with a YouTube channel and their insane rules. But the Monty Fritz interview about Marsha Blackburn got flagged and taken down.
Did it really?
Yeah.
We're going to get him back on.
Yeah.
Monty Fritz is a local guy who's running against Marsha Blackburn. If I get him back on, I'm going to hammer him on these issues here. He's a nice guy, and he wants to talk about running for governor from a positive standpoint. Well, I just have this vision that I'd like to do out there. It's like, no, go for the policies, go for the jugular. This lady is a shill for the technocracy. But yeah, they took that down. I'm not surprised, actually.
They got flagged for community violations or something. I mean, maybe you were too mean to poor Marsha Blackburn.
Boy, we didn't even touch her. We didn't even touch her. Well, and there's a lot of things on today's program we didn't touch either. But that's all the time that we got. Thank you so much for joining us. Tomorrow we have a very special program. We've got a couple of interesting interviews. As a matter of fact, tomorrow we have joining us, he visited the area, and it's Bradley Dean of Sons of Liberty, who actually did an in-studio interview. First time we've ever done anything like that. That'll be tomorrow, along with Eric Peters. Hope you can join us then. Thank you. Have a good day. The Common Man. They created Common Core to dumb down our children. They created Common Pass to track and control us. Their Commons Project to make sure the commoners own nothing. And the communist future. They see the common man as simple, unsophisticated, ordinary. But each of us has worth and dignity, created in the image of God. That is what we have in common. That is what they want to take away. Their most powerful weapons are isolation, deception, intimidation. They desire to know everything about us while they hide everything from us. It's time to turn that around and expose what they want to hide. Please share the information and links you'll find at thedavidknightshow.com. Thank you for listening. Thank you for sharing. If you can't support us financially, please keep us in your prayers. thedavidknightshow.com.